Most of you by now will be familiar with the DSM definition of narcissistic personality disorder. You'll know that a clinical diagnosis requires 6 out of 9 equally weighted traits. It's like a shopping list of annoying things, external behaviors that we can observe in the client, in the patient, in the person as they go about their daily lives. It includes things like bullying, being very attached to a fantasy, grandiose version of themselves, being extremely envious, being very haughty in their demeanor. Haughty in their demeanor. Yes, that's the language that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual uses. And I think sometimes these equally weighted lists for a personality disorder, apart from not being a great way of defining somebody's mental health issue, do all of us a little bit of a disservice, because you can think, okay, I've seen that, and that, but there's all these other things that I didn't see. And one of the things that particularly interests me at the moment is the way we, generally speaking, in the online narcissism community, not in academia, we don't talk about envy all that much. And I think it's a shame, because I think we should be addressing this particular component with more fervor. You know, if you're really looking to identify somebody with a pathology, somebody who is predatory in their outlook, somebody who lacks a moral core, somebody who is potentially dangerous if you're involved in a relationship with them, be it in business, family, friendship, or romantic, is this issue of envy. People who are strongly desirous of another person's attributes. Now, of course, I'm aware that sometimes this can be healthy. You see somebody, you admire them. Some of my friends, I'm very lucky to be in contact with people who are top-level athletes in their field, things like bodybuilding or martial arts. And I think, wow, that's really cool. That's an inspiration. I suppose you could argue that that's somewhere on the spectrum of envy, but it's a feeling that motivates me to either take action to be more like them, or to simply offer respect and admiration. The other end of the spectrum of envy, let's say we've just invented one right now, would be something much, much darker. And it's where, when the person sees somebody has something that they want, or in the case of a pathology, feel they deserve. That's two different states, isn't it? You know, I see something that I know I want. I'm like, God, good on you for doing that. I also really want that. Okay, you know, maybe we're on the spectrum for envy there. But if my response is, I deserve that, why don't I have that? What are we talking about there? Entitlement. Entitlement. So envy that is born of entitlement will lead to a very dark force that is called resentment. Resentment in relationships is slow poison. Some of you who follow me are coaches, counselors, and therapists, and some of you specialize in relationship therapy. If what I say is false, call me out in the comments. I don't know much about relationship therapy, but I've heard it said, and I believe it's true, that once a therapist has seen real resentment creep into a partnership, let's say in marriage counseling, couples counseling, it's actually quite difficult to walk back from that. What would that experience be like for you? Say you're not married to the person, it's your friend, it's a family member, somebody you know in work, or a romantic partner in the early phases. What that does, that envy born of entitlement that generates resentment, the slow poison of the relationship is they won't be able to help themselves from engaging in passive aggression. And nothing destroys trust. Nothing destroys compassion and empathy and the sanctity of that bond that you have with that person than the slow, corrosive acid drip of passive aggression. It might be through comments. It might be through looks. Sometimes you just feel it. You feel the childlike hyper competitiveness of the other person. And you know that on some level, as much as they say they love you, as much as they say you're my friend, They actually hate you for what you have because they think it should be given to them. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think it's a double-edged sword. People are way more aware of mental health nowadays than they were when I graduated in 1999. It was 26 years later. Bloody hell, that means I'm quite old. People are way more aware. They're way more aware of psychology issues, and they're far more aware of mental health issues, and they're far more aware of even personality disorders and pathologies. And broadly speaking, you could say, well, that should be a good. Should be a good. The problem is, if it is democratized, meaning it goes into the hands of the people, the demos, more and more, there is a sense in which we in the communal space have ownership of the definitions of these pathological disorders. And you might think, well, what's so wrong with that? It typically means that the definitions become corroded. There's entropy in the definitions, and it usually means there's a shift in the way these things are perceived. So normally in the narcissism space, and when I say normally, I'm talking statistically, the mean, median, or mode, the average person who's talking about narcissism, they essentially mean a nasty person. And it's quite surface without really penetrating to what's the mechanics behind this nastiness? Why is this nastiness happening? And that's where I want us to start looking and going, what are the mechanics here? What does it mean? And what's my place in this? Because we can sit and talk all day. The narcissist does this. The narcissist says that. The narcissist's pathology is rooted in this experience in childhood or that. And they're somatic with a dash of BPD and a touch of histrionic. It's very focused on them. And I'm interested in looking at the mechanics of the relationship because I can't see inside of somebody's mind. Neither can you. None of us can. I don't really know what's happening inside of their mind. But I can observe patterns of behavior, and I know what's happening in my mind. I know how I'm relating to my perception, my fantasy of them, and I know how I'm reacting to the mechanics of the behavior in the relationship. I think, my suspicion, my intuition is people will have more potency if they view it this way. We're going to focus on the behavioral patterns that we can actually observe. Yes, I have spent the last 13 years on YouTube saying that my degree in behavioral psychology was useless for narcissism. And now all this time later, I'm saying, hey, let's just talk about what we can observe. You can't analyze their dreams. They're not going to tell you the truth about their unconscious states and how they feel anyway. What can we see? What can we see? What can we measure? What can we say we objectively know to be true? The behaviors, the incidents, the time, the date, what was said, what was done, the way it was framed, that kind of a thing we can say. And then we can talk about, absolutely, we can talk about how do I feel about that? And what's my spontaneous unconscious response? Is it to keep the peace? Is it to, oh, they're in pain, I must save them? Is it counter resentment? You know, their narcissistic defense triggers my narcissistic defense. They're nasty with me, well, I'm going to be nasty back. Do I go into sad baby mode? Oh, learned helplessness. Why does this always happen to me? This we can observe. And it means we're taking back into our own potency, our own power, things we can make statements about. I can say, this thing happened. I observed this behavior. And I can say, this is how I felt about it. And this is how I responded to it. These are things I can observe. These are things I can control. Back to envy. You observe a pattern of behavior where the person seems to be so envious due to entitlement. They don't just admire the other person, or they have this moment of whimsy, some fantasy. Oh, I wish I was like him. I wish I had what she had, and then get on with the rest of their day. They sit and seethe. How dare they have whatever? I mean, it could be material things. It could be a lifestyle. You may be very charming. You may be very charismatic. She may be very funny. Everybody laughs at her. Oh, they all love her. Yeah, that's right. They invite her to everything. And we think, well, you look around at a room full of people, they all have a head like you do, presumably. They all have eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and they're all speaking the same language and nodding along, and we're all in this consensus space. But we don't know what's going on inside of individual people's minds. I don't know how angry Sarah is getting over the fact that Mary's popular, because I wouldn't. Do you see what I'm saying? Can you hear what I'm saying? And more importantly, can you feel what I'm saying? Can you feel it? I don't know. And maybe that's a vulnerability. And maybe the fact that I think I know, because I'm judging who was Sarah, who was Mary. I don't know. Mary's the angry one now. Mary's the resentful one. Sarah's the funny one. There's no way Mary's going to be angry with Sarah for being funny and popular. Why? Because I'm applying my map of reality to Mary's map of reality, and I'm projecting it. I'm projecting it. You hearing me? I'm projecting how I feel onto her. Mary goes home, I don't know, let's make it cartoonish. She's seething for hours on end, playing death metal, taking pictures of Sarah and cutting them up and screaming and crying in a frustrated rage. That's extremely unlikely and extreme, but maybe she's doing something like that inside of her head. Maybe on the drive home, she's genuinely angry and full of rage. Why rage? Somebody said narcissistic injury was a thing. Somebody else might have said narcissistic rage was a thing. It's born of an infantile perspective that if you remove the fact that it's infantile, of course, the whole pathology collapses. But there's key components. So what can we logically deduce must be there? If Mary's enraged that Sarah is funny and popular, Mary must be very envious, right? Envy is going to be a key component to this cocktail. Can we agree? She must also be very entitled. She must also, within that entitlement, kind of believe that the best things in life should be given. Why would an adult believe that? But she does. And worse, she believes it should be given to her. Solipsism, envy, entitlement, an external locus of control, solipsism. And then beyond that, resentment. And we'll start to see and hear and feel the slow drip, corrosive power of resentment, because Mary really hates Sarah for this. She hates Sarah for this, and she hates Sarah that she doesn't have what Sarah has. It's alienating. Resentment and hatred for a person for doing well, for being happy, is alienating. It's isolating. I am of the opinion, ladies and gentlemen, and I openly admit that I could be a total crackpot, that the reason we're seeing culture break down and people say, oh, it's the Western world, it's the Anglosphere. I spend quite a lot of time in the Middle East. It's not just in the Anglosphere. The world is the West. If they have Instagram and they know who the Kardashians are, they're in the West, culturally speaking. It's breaking everything down. The green-eyed monster and the resentment and the entitlement is fracturing families that have been tight for decades. It's fracturing friendship groups that have been tight for decades. I don't want to give personal examples from my own life, so let me tell you a lie. Let me tell you something that's not true. My mother lives next door and has done for 15 years to a Macedonian Sikh mixed family, blended family. All the Macedonians would come to the weddings. All of the Sikhs would come to the weddings. They'd have parties that took place in the house that would last literally 3 days. Everyone on the street was invited. And I'm talking about things that were happening in 2000, so it's 13 years ago. And I watched because I go to my mother's to visit for a few days maybe every 4 months. So I would see on this like 4 to 8 month cycle, because sometimes I'm away traveling for longer, the breakdown of the relationships in this group. And it's been so sad to watch. A really tight group of people they could summon to a party in a house, 40 people. 40, and it was friends, family, people who know each other, all their kids. It was warm. It was cohesive. It is 13 years later. I watched it break down and break down and break. This one's fallen out with that one. That one got money after the divorce that they shouldn't have had. This one was cut out of the inheritance. This one stole the house from the father. And I just see fracturing. I see fracturing. And I see it everywhere. I see it in my social groups. I see it in the people I grew up with. I see it in my family and in my extended family. Fracturing, fracturing, fracturing. It's this we thrive, humans thrive in coherence. It's a decoherence. It's a sort of a social entropy. And I don't believe that everybody's turning into a narcissistic psychopath, but I do think the coordinates of our culture are becoming increasingly narcissistic and increasingly psychopathic. So there's far more evidence of narcissistic style. A style is a pattern of behavior, not a pathology. It's not a personality disorder, which is permanent, pervasive, and personal across contexts and across time. A style is just a pattern of behavior. But just because it's a style and not a personality disorder doesn't mean it's not powerfully destructive. Envy, entitlement, rage, hatred, resentment, passive aggression that then becomes open aggression. That wasn't a very cheerful video. I didn't mean to go that way, but that's the way it went. I do think these things are fixable, but I think that they're only fixable when we as adults look at them and take hold of them and go, aha, if I know that there is an effect, it's like a pandemic, a virus, a miasma hanging in the air that's decohering the tribal groups, the social groups. So even when you have a happy story where two tribes came together, our culture's based on food. Our culture's based on food. We really like music. Well, we really like music. We really like dancing. Guess what? So do we. Bang, and then it's gone. I mean, 13 years may sound like a long time, but it's not really. And it's literally gone now. And I'm just like, wow. And to me, that's a reflection of the way many things are going. If we're aware of the mechanics, if we're aware of what we can observe, so I can say that that's not even a psychological, what I just told you, that story is not even psychological. It would be sociological, maybe even anthropological. You could say, I observe these tribes are breaking up. They just are not. They used to hang around and eat and dance with each other, and now they don't. It's gone. So what can we observe? What are we projecting? How do we interact? Where are we in this? Like, how do I feel about this? How am I a part of this? Where is this happening in me? Can I, true shadow work and shadow integration would be to look and say, where is there envy in me? Where is there resentment in me? Where is there shunning, casting out, the drive to split things up in me? And how do I integrate that? When we can do it in ourselves and we can see things as they really are, I think we have a much, much better chance as a culture, as a species at this point, because we as a species are probably entering into existential threat territory in the next 20, 30 years. We can preemptively offset these issues, but we must be awake to what's happening. Jung said the primary role of psychotherapy, of the psychotherapist, is to lead the client from unconsciousness to consciousness. It's a kind of alchemy, from lead to gold. Alchemy was never about transmuting base metals into precious metals for material wealth. That was always a metaphor for base level consciousness into higher level consciousness. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I have a new course. It's out now. You can get it from here. It's really good and will help you overcome narcissistic abuse forevermore. And that's all I have for you. Hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.